videos for the next couple of months are gonna be a challenge of how much writing can I fit in around school and studying, because historically I never managed to balance the two quite well, but also like I'm in a different stage of writing than I usually am, so I think it will be a little bit easier. I'm really just doing like world building and research and reoutlining for the next few months, so hopefully I can keep up with what I want to accomplish. In October and November especially, I will let myself just not do anything book related if it's just too much for me. So hello, it is September 8th. So I have a few goals that I want to accomplish in September in terms of Project Camelot. The first thing I want to do is some voice practice exercises for my 4 narrators. I do already like know what kind of patterns they have in terms of like imagery and certain like sentence structures and stuff, but I really want to like hone in on what the 4 of them sound like, because 4 narrators is a lot for a standalone novel. It is fantasy, so this is pretty like normal, but I want the 4 of them to really sound distinct from one another, because I do have an idea of what the 4 of them need to sound like, and I really hope I can get the prose to sound like that for each of them. So I want to do like a little bit of practice this month, taking 1 or 2 scenes from like early on to rewrite them and focusing specifically on making the narration sound like it could only be from this narrator. My second goal for this month is working on the map and place names. I already started doing this at the end of August. I sketched out some rough versions of the world map and kind of starting to place the countries and the continents, because getting like a feel of that really determines certain aspects of the history and also like politics and stuff. The third thing that I wanted to focus on is the religions. Now there's one major religion that like completely defines the book. There's so much about this religion, its history and the beliefs and practices that dictates how this book is going to pan out. And so I really want to figure out the details of the history and how certain things came to be up until the present point in the book. My 4th goal this month, and I'm realizing this might be a lot to accomplish this month, but we'll see. I want to figure out the motivations for some characters. I did mention when I finished my first draft that I wasn't completely set on the motivations, goals of one of my main characters, who I consider the main protagonist. And I do think I just need to suck it up and go in the direction that I was scared to go in with her. What her goals are, what is driving her to do these things. There's also 2 side characters that I've technically added in, but they are combinations of pre-existing characters. Essentially, I had these 2 original characters that were unrelated to any kind of characters in the legends, and I figured out how to connect them to the legends, but I also like combined certain characters in the process. So with these 2 characters, I really want to figure out their backgrounds and what their goals are, because I already have an idea of like what they're doing and why they're doing it, but I want to keep a note of it so that I don't forget when I'm ready to start draft 2. And my 5th goal is to continue reoutlining the book. If those are my goals for this month. I made these goals on 1st of September when I was feeling very optimistic, but having since gone through a week of the semester already, I realized that I just might not have the energy to do all of this, and that's okay because I have a lot of time to just kind of think about it. These are things that they're not pressing, and a lot of it I can think about in the background, and just take some notes when I come up with some ideas. My goal for starting the second draft of the book is the end of December, beginning of January. I do expect my draft 2 to take a lot longer than my first draft did. I want it to be a slow draft. I'm gonna be editing as I go and trying to bring the prose up to a level that I want it to be. And I want to be really careful with how I'm resolving the subplots and tying them in, because that's usually like one of the things that I have a lot of trouble with. I cannot keep track of my subplots, but that's why I want to really carefully outline the book before I start draft 2. Something that I did last week was I printed the first half of the book. This is one-sided, and it's Act 1 and Act 2, chapters 1 to 20. I already reread chapters. I don't really want to show it, but I reread chapters 1 and 2, and I made notes on it, so you can kind of see where I scribbled all of my annotations, and it's been very enlightening. On the first page of the first chapter, I already realized that there's too much exposition. There's too much exposition, giving too much context for what is happening and why, when the first page should be rooted in the present moment and establishing like the characters' motivations. It really doesn't do that. It's something that like I didn't realize when I first wrote it, and now that I'm like looking back at it, I'm like, oh, it needs a complete rewrite. It's not bad, and I needed to write all of this to understand like the context of certain things, because I'm pretty sure a lot of this exposition that I wrote here, I came up with as I was just like writing the scene, and so I needed to write it to understand why certain things are happening and why certain things are the way they are. But now I need to like peel all of that back and have the scenes more rooted in the present, especially for chapter 1. But I really enjoyed reading it back though, which is good. Like I feel like for once I'm comfortable with the point I chose to start the book in, and what scenes I chose to put in the first chapter, because that's something I usually struggle with. I never know when, like at what point in the story the book should start, but I think I have like the right scenes here. But this was after like 3 to 5 iterations of chapter 1. I rewrote chapter 1 several times because I went through at least 3 versions of the first scene in my zero draft, and then I rewrote the beginning when I was writing the first draft. So it took a few attempts, but I think I'm comfortable with where the book starts now. So it's very telling of what the themes are, and it establishes the tone of the book very well. I'm happy with what the scenes have in them, like the content, but it's just like the execution that needs some work right now. It's also really good that I was able to just reread it and pick up on this myself, because it means that, you know, I have the knowledge that I need to make the book better. Like I'm not just like rereading it and lost at what needs to be fixed. Like I know what needs to be fixed. I can see what the problems are, and I really enjoyed reading over certain parts. I'm very excited to write draft 2. This book is everything that I would want in an Arthurian legend retelling, and I'm very grateful that I got this idea, and that I was like inspired to write this, because I've enjoyed Arthurian legend stories and retellings for a long time now, and it's one of those things that I feel like seeps into a lot of other media a lot of the time, like a lot of references to like Morgana or Morgan Le Fay and Merlin or King Arthur. So I'm also like very attached to my interpretations of certain characters. Like I genuinely don't think there's been like versions of them that are like this yet. I could be wrong, but when I look at other novels that are Arthurian legend retellings, they don't quite have this kind of feeling, these themes and these focal points, and I think it could potentially bring something different. But I don't want to speak too soon, but at least like from what I've seen, I found an intersection that I love writing and I want to read, but I don't really think there's a lot of. I've been reading devotions by Mary Oliver, and I really like a lot of her poems. It makes me think of Project Camelot a lot, especially like one character in particular. There's certain poems that make me think of this character. So this morning I finished reading the last chapter in Act 1 of Project Camelot. I'm realizing that this book is gonna have a lot of rewrites because already I have changed a lot of plot points and plot details that impact a lot of the story, and so even from Act 1 I have to incorporate some of those details. I started to realize that there's certain chapters that don't really fit in properly in Act 1 with the causal chain, and I'm trying to see if there's a way for me to make each action a reaction of a previous chapter, so that it's more tightly knit and flows into each other a lot more directly. There's like one chapter in particular that is currently chapter 3, and I'm thinking of moving it later to make it a result of something specific, because at the moment chapter 3 is like the inciting incident for one of the narrators, but I feel like where it stands right now, it kind of comes out of nowhere, so I'm gonna have to work around like the sequence of events. I realized that in the first few chapters where I had already done a lot of revising, I made a lot more detailed annotations and a lot more line level annotations, but then in the later chapters of Act 1 where I did not revise at all, I was just making notes on like overview stuff, like plot and chapter and scene level things, instead of like paragraph and line level edits. I found that having 4 narrators meant that I was kind of introducing things separately from one another, and it's not like the narrators are in 4 different places. They are all within the same place for most of Act 1, and so there's really no reason for me to make it so disjointed and not have all the events kind of directly flow into one another. I do think it might be easier for me to problem solve these things in a few months when I take a break from it. I might be too close to the book still to be able to make choices that are better for the story. I feel like the dread of having to sit down and completely like reorder certain sections. I know it's for the better, like I want to make the story stronger, and I want to have the causal chain be very tight-knit. My problem is I have a lot of running plot lines, and I can't really like avoid that because it is a big cast. It's a high fantasy novel. It's gonna have a big cast because there's a lot of politics. So I actually realized yesterday that the current structure I have for Project Camelot, which is 4-act structure, won't work for the plot as it is right now, and dividing the book into 6 parts would work better because there's kind of 6 distinct arcs in the course of the book. So the reoutlining I've been doing for draft 2 up until this point needs to be reworked, but I think it will be better for the pacing of the story, and it'll make the book stronger in the long run. In my 0 draft and my first draft, I've been working with 4 narrators, and all 4 narrators had at least 1 chapter in the first act, but when I reoutlined part 1 yesterday with this new kind of 6-part structure, I realized only 2 of those characters needed to narrate. The other 2 did not need to narrate at all, and I've been wondering if those other 2 characters even need to be narrators. I do think there's certain parts of the story where those other 2 characters will be alone, and there's some story there that needs to be accessed, but I don't know. I'll think about it and see if the book needs to be reduced to 2 narrators. I do think the book as it was with 4 narrators was fine, because there's kind of certain parallels to another group of 4 that has to do with the religion, and I wanted to kind of draw parallels between the kind of religious historical group and the current 4 narrators. But if I find that it might be more streamlined with just 2 narrators, I might do that. I mean, in my original like 1-sentence pitch that I wrote earlier this year, when I first got the idea for the book, it was just those 2 characters that were in the pitch. It was meant to be focused on them, but I'm really attached to the other 2 characters as well, so I think it's just like personal bias that's keeping me from cutting their point of view right now. In terms of the rest of September, I do think I might just work on the outline, and then once September is over, take a break from Project Camelot I don't think I'll be able to accomplish any of my other goals. And once September is over, I do plan on stepping back from Project Camelot until maybe December, because I think I need a break. I've been working on this book since February. I started brainstorming, I started writing it in May, and I think I need a break now. So in October and November, I am going to be swamped with university work, but if I do have the chance to write, there's a couple things I could work on. I have three novel projects that I could work on brainstorming and outlining. So one of those is a high fantasy series, which is just a personal project for now, at least. But it's a personal project that I started working on last year, and I have zero drafted it, but I changed who the book one antagonists are. So a lot of the conflict needs to be reworked. The antagonist that I had in book one, I realized would fit better in book two with another antagonist, because they're kind of related to one another. So I had to kind of reconstruct book one, basically. My second one is, I think I talked about in either July or August, I can't remember. I think it was August. In my August video, I started to brainstorm a urban fantasy novel that I'm codenaming Project Night for now, even though that doesn't really apply anymore. But anyways, we'll call it Project Night for now. And I've been getting a lot of ideas for it, and it would be nice to outline it, because I do think that will be my main novel project once Project Camelot is done, like done. So I could work on that. Or there's another novel project that has been sitting in my head since 2022, that I have main kind of, I think I outlined it. I have like a rough outline. I have the characters. I have the main conflicts. I know what a lot of the subplots are. And it was the project that I wanted to write in 2022 or 2023 to be what I queried with, but then I never ended up writing it because I didn't feel like I was ready at my skill level at that point. So I could also work on that, but I am leaning towards Project Night. I do think Project Night would be the next thing that would keep me very passionate about writing, and it's the kind of book that I think only, I could write. Like, it's such a specific blend of things, and it's incredibly personal, and it'll be a very fun book. It's basically like a heist novel, sort of. It is a heist novel, so it'll be really fun. Oh, it would be really fun in October to write something spooky though. I write basically like anything that I write that's contemporary fantasy ends up with a lot of horror elements in it. So I have a short story that I still haven't finished, that I think I last moved on in the beginning of August. I called it like Meet Me in the Mist, and now it's pretty spooky. I've been having a lot of trouble imagining two of the new characters. It's a pair of sisters who are in Arthurian legends, but I'm not sure what exactly I want them to look like. I don't know what I want them to be like. I know where they're gonna both end up at the end of the book, but they're both really important, and I don't want them to, especially one of them is really important, and I don't want them to overshadow the main protagonist, because I feel like it could easily happen if I don't write the main character correctly. I might end up not writing the dynamics the way I wanted to, but I don't know. I have an exam tomorrow, so I'm gonna go study for that.
The skinny dogs that ran out, they were so sad, they were so malnourished. But they had colors, which was so crazy, because I'm like, if you have colors, you'll have owners, so where's your owner? In the bush. Bush people.
This is gonna be my last clip for this video. I had a lot of goals at the start of the month for Project Camelot, and I very quickly realized that I didn't have the energy to work on all of this. Based off of what I said at the start of the month, what I managed to accomplish was rereading Act 1. I reread Act 1 and I annotated it, and I used that as a guide on reoutlining Act 1 of the book. I also ended up realizing that I needed to restructure the story. So instead of 4 parts, it's going to be 6 parts now. Each of those parts focuses on a specific arc in the main story, so I thought that was best to do in terms of the structure and what I should be focusing on in my second draft. I did do some character work on the quote-unquote new characters. There's 2 new characters that are technically just combinations of previous characters that existed in my early drafts of the book. I did do some brainstorming on what their backstories are, what led them to be at the point that they are at the start of the story, and what is motivating them to do what they do in the book. I've come up with some very interesting lore on both of them that kind of ties back to the original legends, but it's also a bit of a twist on it, so we'll see how that goes. I'm not 100% sure on one of them. I'm talking about a pair of sisters. Their stories are very interconnected, but they both impact the main plot in different ways, and I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but I think I just need to write draft 2 to see how that goes, and then I'll have to decide if anything needs to change after that. I've been doing a lot of brainstorming for the cast in general, and I am happy with where the recurring cast is right now. I didn't do a whole lot of active brainstorming and research on the religions in the book, so that is something that I'm gonna have to work on some other time. And I didn't do any more map work. I do have a sketch map. I do have place names for the important places. So I do have what's relevant for now, but that's not really important because names can change in the future, so I'm not too fussed on solidifying place names and the layout of the world right now. I've also been toying with the idea of only having 2 narrators and not 4. I have yet to decide on that. In October, I've decided that I will outline Project Night. It's a book that I want to write hopefully at the end of next year or in the summer next year if I am finished with the second draft of Project Camelot by then. And I've been getting a lot of ideas for this book. I have like a whole running note on my phone of specific details and just passages that I want to include. So I'm really excited to be able to write this book. I think it'll be very descriptive. Project Night is contemporary, and I feel like the characters are they're probably around the same age as the main cast in Project Camelot, but because Project Camelot is about high society in a high fantasy setting, the mentalities of the characters feel very different, and it'll be nice to write something that isn't high fantasy for a while. The question at the start of this video about fitting in writing around school, in my humble experience, it's very difficult. It's just writing is something that's very mentally taxing, especially at the stage I am right now with Project Camelot. It's a lot of problem solving, and it's not always fun to go from writing up assignments and studying for exams and then having to do active research and making decisions on the plot of a book. I am happy with the progress that I made though this month. It's definitely more than I was expecting myself to do. That is all for this video. Bye-bye.